Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here, and welcome to another episode of Jambareeqi Orange, the show where I let my patrons decide what I review. The options for this month's poll included Captain Underpants, Black Panther the Animated Series, The Lion King 2 Simba's Pride, Flight of the Dragons, We're Back a Dinosaur Story, Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders. They chose The Lion King 2. In The Lion King 2, Simba is now raising a daughter called Kiara who wants to become a hunter and have fun, but her dad is being too protective. While playing outside of the Pride Lands, Kiara bumps into an outsider lion cub called Kovu and they have an adventure together. However, Simba and Kovu's mother Zira are outraged by this new friendship. It turns out that Simba banished Kovu's pride because they were avid followers of Scar during his reign. Zira suddenly gets a devious idea. She can raise Kovu to become a killing machine, order him to befriend Kiara, and assassinate Simba. Years pass, Simba is still being overprotective of Kiara, and Kovu is now a soulless killer bent on his mission to eliminate Simba. Although, once Kovu starts hanging out with Kiara, he discovers the benefits of fun and romance, which makes him become hesitant about going ahead with the assassination. Will Kovu betray his mother? And if he does, how will he tell his secret to Simba and Kiara? The Lion King 2 was actually the first straight-to-video Disney sequel I ever saw, and I do remember watching it frequently as a child. It was one of my favourite VHS tapes to play. However, once I got older, I realised that this film wasn't as great as I thought it was. Sure, the nostalgic feelings are still there, don't get me wrong. Every time I watch this film I feel warm and fuzzy. But when I take off my rose-tinted glasses and really analyse this film, I can't convince myself that it's as amazing as I remember. I also wouldn't say that it's an underrated gem or a perfectly polished masterpiece that unfairly went under the radar. Yes, it's one of the more watchable Disney sequels out there. I'd watch it over Belle's Magical World or Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 any day. But it still has a lot of the same criticisms that you could apply to many other straight-to-video Disney sequels. I can also totally sense that the filmmakers had a limited budget and a tight schedule to follow. I get why critics didn't like it, and I'm not surprised that it's not made much of an impact outside of the straight-to-video Disney sequel fandom. The film has blemishes and weaknesses that are glaring hindrances to its overall quality. First of all, I don't think it's a very good sequel. Some things just don't make sense in terms of continuity. I mean, where were the outsiders in the first film? They're nowhere to be seen on screen, and if they were off screen, why were they off screen? It makes even less sense when you remember that everyone turned on Scar at the end of the first film, so there's no way any of those lionesses were destined to be part of Zira's cult. At the end of the day, the filmmakers invented the outsiders specifically for this movie, so we could tell its Romeo and Juliet story about rival prides. The thing is, the film could have had a rival pride without having them being connected to Scar in some way. The movie didn't need to have the outsiders be Scar's followers. Imagine this, here's an alternative idea. What if centuries before there was a pride that used to live on Pride Rock, but their tyrannical leader decided, you know what, let's move, let's take over other rocks. Centuries pass and a descendant of that very pride decides, you know what, we need to take back Pride Rock, it belongs to us. It's a different kind of idea, but one that can be set up to follow the same story without making the audience perform brain gymnastics trying to work out how this rival pride connects to the first film somehow. Also, Zira claims that Scar handpicked Kovu as his heir, but this goes completely against Scar's character. Scar was a narcissistic loner who only valued others for self-gain, and he never outspokenly said he had plans for a new bloodline once he would become king. He just wanted to be pampered and privileged, that's all. Not to mention, considering his willingness to kill his cub nephew, I struggle to believe that he has a soft spot for kids. The filmmakers were clearly trying to reinterpret Scar's character to work him into their movie's narrative. Which would be fine if The Lion King 2 was a complete reboot, but it's not. These plot holes result in a second chapter that doesn't neatly connect to the first, which I find to be poor storytelling, I'm afraid. You could cherry pick small details from the first film or come up with fun fan theories of your own to justify the continuity in your eyes, but it shouldn't be the audience's responsibility to fill in the plot holes that the writers ended up digging themselves. I think there's a fine line between audience interpretation and the audience doing the writer's jobs for them. So this film isn't too faithful to the first movie. Okay, maybe it's trying to be its own thing then. Well, kind of, but not really. For the most part, it's pretty much a remake of the first film. An oppressed group of animals try to overthrow the king by manipulating his offspring into trusting them, in a bid to assassinate his highness while his guard is down. Sure, things pan out differently and other elements are thrown into the film, but the template is still there. Now, I'm cool with a Disney sequel technically being a remake, as one of my favourite Disney sequels, Rescuers Down Under, was pretty much doing the same with its predecessor. But here's the thing, The Rescuers was made during a dark age for Disney, when the studio had to cut costs. So producing a bigger and more expensive remake years later seems justified. Why remake a highly polished blockbuster like The Lion King after it's just been released, with the budget and quality of a straight-to-video movie, mind you? It's a disappointment waiting to happen. The film tries to recreate moments and sequences from the first film, but I can tell that the animation budget has been spent frivolously, resulting in inconsistent animation quality. Meaning that sometimes shots can look pretty decent, but other times the cheapness really shows, and I can see that corners have been cut. So the film's many attempts at remaking The Lion King can look like embarrassing downgrades, which is distracting to say the least. And this is not just due to the scattered budget control. Lion King 2 doesn't have the material needed to match the scale of the first film. For example, this sequel tries to have its own Be Prepared called My Lullaby, but it does it inside a termite hill, where there's little creative room for executing something grandiose and epic. Sure, characters can punch holes in the walls to bring in light, and swarms of termites can fly around, but that's about it. So any effort to replicate the impact of Be Prepared is lost here. Be Prepared took advantage of its volcanic environment to pull off really imaginative visuals. I honestly don't think a termite hill can really compare or live up to Be Prepared's theatrical presentation. Now, you could argue, well, as a remake, The Lion King 2 improves on the first film's romance, because it's given more time to focus on it. But here's the thing, Nala and Simba's romance in the first film wasn't supposed to be a central focus, but rather foreshadowing for the film's message about the circle of life at the end. Nala's bigger purpose in the movie was to be a voice of reason for Simba. Praising Lion King 2 for improving on the romance in the first film just comes off as a hollow compliment to me. So I think this film fails not only as a sequel, but also as a remake. Another issue I have with this movie is how heavy-handed it can be. This is a film that tries way too hard to get things across to the audience. I do feel insulted by how this movie attempts to communicate with me sometimes. From the awkward way it drops characters' names.
Zira. Simba. Nala.
Zira. Where's your pretty daughter, Nala? Vitani.
To the patronising exposition dumps in the middle of scenes.
Kovu. Scar wasn't even his father. He just took him in. Oh, hey, Vitani. Where's little termite Kovu? The chosen one.
Not to mention, there's a whole musical number called Upendi, which has Rafiki spelling out the blossoming romance between Kovu and Kiara, as if we couldn't tell what was happening already. Heck, the filmmakers weren't even entirely sure that this whole song could have gotten that across, so they end it with Kiara saying this.
Upendi, it means love, doesn't it?
Oh, Kiara. Yeah, the song is also for the sake of the characters too, to maybe give them a little nudge, but wouldn't it be more natural and engaging to see the characters work out their romantic feelings themselves, rather than having Rafiki play matchmaker, spelling out their feelings and having obvious heart symbols all over the screen? The film's forced style of writing not only makes much of the dialogue sound unnatural, but it also shows that the film doesn't have much confidence in the audience's intelligence. These story details could have been told to the audience in a more organic way, with a little creativity. Then there's the commonly criticised character of Nuka, Zira's other son, who wants to prove his worth to his mother and envies his brother's position as the chosen one. Nuka is just too annoying to me, a character who won't shut up talking or stop moving around giddily. Not helping is his voice actor Andy Dick, who is clearly trying way too hard to be funny behind the microphone.
I could be a leader if she'd just give me a chance.
My biggest issue, though, is that there's not much of a purpose to him throughout the film. I mean, we already have Timon and Pumbaa, so more comic relief characters aren't required. Plus, most of his contributions to Zira's mission are also being done by his sister Vitani, who is taking the assassination way more seriously. As harsh as it sounds, his only unique purpose in this film is to die. After Kovu refuses to assassinate Simba, Nuka volunteers to chase after Simba up a dam, only to be killed by a falling log. This brings tension between Kovu and the outsiders, as Zira blames him for Nuka's death. When really, it's Zira's fault, because her decision to favour Kovu above Nuka gave the guy insecurities that pushed him to extreme levels to impress her. While I appreciate the intended tragedy of this scene, I don't find myself feeling that sad while watching it. Because Nuka has spent the whole film being very annoying, as his personality is being dialed up to 11. If Nuka was a more interesting and likeable character to me, then sure, I'd really feel the somber heartbreak of a desperate son's tragic death in this scene. But Nuka is a lion who spends most of the movie complaining miserably, screeching loudly, trying too hard to be funny, and dumping exposition on the audience. It's hard to get teary-eyed about a character this irritating to me. I think a major hindrance against this sequel is its running time. This film could have been just a bit longer, so it could have expanded on its ideas and strengthened scenes. I mean, I actually forget that Simba has a plot in this movie. He's going through father issues, but any moment that's supposed to dramatically reflect those internal feelings fall flat, because it's kind of buried underneath other things that get a bit more screen time, like Zira's revenge, the romance, and Kovu's feelings about two different prides. While I have all these complaints about the movie, I can't say that I hate it. That's going too far. Like I said, it is one of the more watchable Disney sequels out there, and I will admit that there are some things that do work in this film. First of all, I think the romance is pretty enjoyable. Yeah, Kiara and Kovu are very adorable together. There's some good romantic tension between them before things blossom, and I can sense some chemistry there. Could their relationship have been stronger? Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a romance that's deep enough to warrant a musical duet about their love, which does happen. I think there could have been just a few more scenes of them having fun together before Kovu is entirely swayed over by Kiara's charms. But as it is, it's a very cute teenage love story. You can see that they are bringing a lot into each other's lives, including emotional support and fun new excitement. Kiara is a likeable offspring character too. Yeah, she could be whiny, but that's teenagers for you. What I like about her is how she's inherited traits from both of her parents. Her father's stubborn determination and her mother's rationality. But she's also her own person, because she's the first in her family to bring peace and empathy to a kingdom that oppresses other groups of animals. She even tries to save Zira from dying in the finale. That's how much compassion she has. This is one of the things that sets Lion King 2 apart from the first film. Unlike her previous generations, Kiara sets out to help those who feel oppressed in the animal kingdom and shows mercy to the villain. Timon and Pumbaa are also really hilarious in this sequel. Their dynamic is strong as ever, and they give us lots of laugh-out-loud moments.
Oh, don't worry, Kiara! Uncle Pumbaa's coming! Oh, no! Oh, let's see. Geez, Simba, the good news is we found your daughter. The bad news is we dropped a warthog on her. Is there a problem with that? Kiara? Kiara? Pumbaa, let me define babysitting! Why, I oughta... Let me at him! Let me at him! Here, hold me back. Okay. Let me at him! Let me at him! Okay. I think you're missing the basic point here.
They also play a part in giving Kovu a taste of fun and contribute Pumbaa's famously dangerous flatulence to the Pride War. However, it does bother me how useless they are within the kingdom. They're frequently assigned to look over Kiara, but fail their job every single time by always letting her out of sight. I get that Simba would be forgiving towards them, as they're his family, but Simba ends up looking very foolish for always relying on them. When it comes down to it, the only reason why Timon and Pumbaa are always hired as babysitters or watchguards is so that Kiara can always easily escape the Pride Lands every time, which is just lazy writing to me. Imagine if instead of Timon and Pumbaa, one of the stronger lionesses of the Pride looked over Kiara, a real beast of a woman who takes no crap. This would not only create an interesting nanny and cub dynamic, but it would also make Kiara's escapes more engaging, because she would have to rely on her own strength and wit, rather than Timon and Pumbaa being easily distracted by themselves. I also think that the film has a few good songs too. Sure, not all of them are great. However, there are some noteworthy tracks, like He Is Not One of Us, a song performed by the Animal Kingdom after Kovu's mission is found out. It's a very grandiose song that truly captures the shame being felt by everyone.
Let him run, let him live, but do not forget what we cannot forgive. He is not one of us. He has never been one of us.
As well as He Lives in You, a song about past generations living on in spirit, which beautifully reflects the film's theme of descendants. It's actually the only song that Lebo M contributed to the film, and it was actually featured in the official Lion King stage production too. I also really like the villains in this film. While Zira is clearly a gender-swapped version of Scar, I can't deny how ridiculously fun she is. She's just so relentless to get revenge on Simba, and her passion is beyond entertaining. It helps that her voice actress Susan Plachette steals the spotlight with a tremendous performance. It's a great balance of wildly over the top and menacingly sinister.
Go for the eye! Break his jaw! Hit him low! Get him! Do what you must!
Kovu makes for a compelling anti-hero too, I think. You can tell that he's really conflicted about his feelings towards his heritage and his newfound love for Kiara. I do feel sorry for him, being the victim of Zira's hateful project to assassinate the king. There's a charm to his bad boy cheekiness, and I like seeing Kiara bringing out his soft, sweet side. He's another aspect of Lion King 2 that sets it apart from the first film, a villain that we can sympathize with, and one that demonstrates that the chain of hatred can be broken.
He wasn't my father, but he was still part of me.
My father said there was a darkness in Scar that he couldn't escape.
Maybe there's a darkness in me, too.
Kovu's sister Vitani is noticeably the most mature outsider. She's very intelligent and knows how to keep her cool, but she's also very faithful to her mother's project. After Kiara makes a speech of peace at the end, she's the first to betray Zira, because she actually listens to and takes in Kiara's speech the quickest. Like I said, she's the smartest of her pride. I just wish that the film could have done more with her. She's very underused. Maybe they could have given some of Nuka's scenes to her. The movie's finale is also pretty awesome. The rainy storm, circling vultures, and dark atmosphere all lend to a very satisfying climatic fight between the warring prides. However, I'll confess that Kiara's speech to bring peace could have been worded better. She asked Simba to find connection with the outsiders by pointing out how they look like members of his pride. The problem is, the outsiders have been heavily designed to look evil and menacing compared to Simba's pride, so the sentiment just comes off as unintentionally funny. The filmmaker's decision to design the outsiders to look very sinister definitely benefits the movie when it wants to frame them in a villainous light, but it bites the film on the arse later on when we get to Kiara's speech. Sometimes creative decisions have this almost seesaw effect. I think that alternatively, Kiara could have compared the Pride's heartbeats or paw prints, something that would help Simba resonate with the outsiders without drastically drawing attention to their villainous designs. To conclude, I think that The Lion King 2 is just okay. It's good for what it is, but it could have been so much better. I really wouldn't call it a masterpiece that deserves more attention, because it's just too flawed and undercooked to be appreciated as an underrated gem. But it's got its own charms, and I do see its appeal. Originally, the film was actually going to be a theatrical production, much like the first movie, and I really wish that Disney stuck to that direction instead of downgrading to a straight-to-video effort. Because there was potential behind this film. With a bigger budget and more time given to writers to flesh the script out and tighten up their ideas, this could have been on the same level as the original Lion King. As it is though, it has its moments and I do quite like some things about it. But I have to admit that the writing feels like amateur fanfiction at times, and the animation quality is very inconsistent. It also wants to be a reboot, remake and sequel all at the same time, resulting in a movie with a very muddled purpose and identity. I'm sure the filmmakers Disney hired to make Lion King 2 had good intentions, as I can see the building blocks for something really great here, but I'm afraid that the finished product is lacking in many areas. If I was to give this film a rating, something I usually don't do on this show, I'd award it with 3 strawberries out of 5. If you personally think this movie's more amazing than I do, then that's fine, all power to your love for this movie. I'm not judging you, I'm just being honest about my relationship with this movie. So, what am I going to be reviewing for the next episode of Jambareeqi Orange? Well, that's entirely up to my patrons. The choices for next month's episode include Over the Hedge, A Wrinkle in Time, the 2003 TV movie, The Lion Guard, Return of the Roar, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, and Romeo and Juliet. How exciting do those poll options sound to you? Pretty cool, right? Now, don't forget that you have to become a patron in order to access this poll. What is a patron? Don't worry, I'll explain. This is my Patreon. It's a site for my fans to make monthly donations to me. Those who donate are called patrons. The money I receive goes towards funding my videos and serves as a supportive income for me. Patrons can donate as much as they want each month and stop donating any time. All donations are greatly appreciated, and in return for their patronage, patrons are given exciting rewards, depending on how much they donate, including their names credited in my main show, access to exclusive videos, and the chance to decide a review on my channel. I'm very excited to find out what film my patrons want me to review next. Cheerio, folks.